So, good afternoon and welcome. Thank you all for joining us for this virtual author visit. I'm Susan DeMarco, a librarian at New Hanover County Public Library. And I also want to introduce my colleague, Megan Baggett, who is working behind the scenes. She is monitoring our chat feature today, so feel free to type in any questions you have, and she will read those out for us. Megan is also going to send out a quick poll so we can get a feel for who our audience is today, and then a poll at the end to get some feedback from you all. So last month, and there's that poll right now. So if you all don't mind taking a moment to answer those quick questions. Last month, the library launched Read Across the County, a community read celebrating New Hanover County's families, diversity, and our unique outdoor environment. The three selected titles are The Home Place, Ruby's Birds, and The Sunday Birds. Today, we are excited to host a visit with Sally J. Pla, author of The Sunday Birds. Sally is a wife and mother, education champion, business journalist, and an award-winning author with English degrees from Colgate and Penn State. Sally is joining us today from her home in Southern California. So I read The Sunday Birds a few months ago, and I looked through it a few minutes ago, and I'm feeling a little starstruck. And I want to say thank you, Sally, for joining us today to talk about your debut novel, The Sunday Birds. And now I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Susan, and I'm so excited to be here with you guys today on this wonderful day, a very hot one for you guys in North Carolina and a hot and dry one for us out here in Southern California. I guess the environment and nature is very much a part of what I wanted to write about in The Sunday Birds, and a book. I wanted to write a book for kids for so many reasons, and also for so many years. It was my dream really always, while I was raising my own three boys and thinking and freelancing for other newspapers and magazines and such. I just basically worked as a business journalist and wrote little articles in the family section of our local newspaper for so long, dreaming of the day when I could have time to write a story for kids. It was always my dream, and I wanted to write about nature. I really wanted to write a book where nature wasn't an enemy or something to be challenged or survived or overcome, where it wasn't an enchanted wood or some kind of magical domain, but where it was just celebrated for itself, where you could just quietly observe what was going on and feel at peace and feel a connection to nature, which is something that I don't think is in kids' books enough. So that was a big part of why I wanted to write it. And I guess I got on a little tangent there, but.
No, that's great. I'm really, really glad that you brought that up. That is what initially drew us to your novel, was the very fact that we wanted to celebrate nature, and your novel does that in such a beautiful way. And then there's so much more to it.
Yeah, there are a lot of reasons, again, why I wrote the book. I thought I maybe would start by showing you guys a photo that I have, a couple photos. This is a picture of, the light is not helping, but there it is. That's me and my three sons.
Oh, that's great.
They're all in their 20s now. When they were young like that, we lived in Wisconsin for many years, sort of by a cornfield in a little small town. And my middle son, Nate, you can see him over there. He absolutely loved birds. He loved birds so much that he would draw pictures of birds every single day. And his grandparents had a copy of the John James Audubon Elephant Folio, that big book where all the pictures of all the different birds of America are, all the big prints. And he was just fascinated by it. So every day he would draw a different bird. I do. I can show you the birds. Okay, these are Nate's birds because we put some of them in a bird book here. He was like 4 or 5 years old, and he was just obsessed. Every day, birds, 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 more birds. He would just draw them from what he saw in that Audubon folio. And then other birds as well, because it translated into going outside and trying to find birds and tracking the cardinals that were in our yard that we would see flashing against the snow, and the seagulls at the beach. And it was a fascination for him. That was one of the first indications as a special interest that he was autistic. And he got his diagnosis, not until a bit later. Until he was around 10, we weren't sure, because he was a kid growing up in the 90s and 2000s, and people weren't as aware then about the symptoms of autism. But his love of birds was just one of the first things. And it was something that I wanted to kind of celebrate in this story. It's why, one of 2 reasons why it's called The Someday Birds and why it's about birds. The second reason is when I was young, like in 4th grade and 5th grade, we had a mom in our school. She was a nature educator. She was an amazing woman. Mrs. Shaw was her name, Joy Shaw. And she would come into school just volunteering her time because she loved nature and she loved the mill house where she lived in Connecticut. She lived in this old mill house that was built in the 1700s, and around it were fields and marshlands and trails. And she would invite classes of kids to come walk through the fields with her, and she would point out every bush and berry and bird and like all the animal trails and all the evidence of what was going on and what looked like just a simple field. It became this magical place just filled with all of these stories about animals and the land, and she just made it come so alive with me. I just loved it. I loved it so much. And it was so great to be able to get out of the classroom as well and be able to walk those trails just as a break, because I was a kid that struggled in school. I didn't do too well in the classroom. I just felt kind of stressed out there. I was the kid that sat in the back row, and I knew all the answers to the questions. That wasn't a problem. But I just never said a word. I was just too stressed out to be there. Now I know I had sensory processing issues. I have an autism diagnosis myself now. But at the time, the world just seemed, in the classroom just seemed too chaotic, too bright, too noisy. It was too much for me to process. So I couldn't really deal. But when we got out in those nature trails and Mrs. Shaw said, "Everybody be quiet. Now you listen, what do you hear?" The world kind of came into focus for me, and I just loved that so much. So that's the other reason why I wanted to make this book set in nature so much and make it about a boy who discovers that, for the first time, how wonderful that can be. And how if you are a kid where the world feels overwhelming, what a wonderful refuge and a wonderful enrichment that can be.
And I think of that also from a teacher's perspective. As a former middle school teacher myself, what a powerful thing that is for educators to know, to think of the power of a quiet outside time, looking at birds and observing nature, whether that's incredibly structured or just everyone's taking a pause and enjoying that. That's really good for educators to hear.
It's amazing to me too how much kids remember that. The blur of days in the classroom kind of go by so fast, and they all blend into each other a little bit. But then you get a bunch of kids out by a turtle pond or out in a field for a day, and they remember every detail of that because it's so unusual and so different. Everything is different. The sights, the sounds, the smells. And it's just a really cool gift to give kids, to get them out in nature, even if it's just, for a short time. It makes such a big impact.
That's great. So I was listening to your, when you were talking about Connecticut and Ms. Shaw, I'm hearing some things that are ringing. I'm finding the details that are in the novel. So
Yeah.
I feel like I'm getting this behind the scenes peek. So for people who haven't read the novel yet, this will be really exciting for you to, as you're reading, you're going to hear all of these little things and you're going to know, oh, this is where she got her inspiration. And that's where that name came from.
That's right. There are some little hints in there from what I said to certain characters. And yeah, definitely Mrs. Shaw is memorialized in this book in a certain mysterious character. And wonderfully enough, I was able to go back to Connecticut a couple years ago when the book came out and meet with Mrs. Shaw, who's now in her 80s. And I was able to tell her how much it meant to me that she used to do that and brought us out into the field like that. And it was just so meaningful. It was so great to be able to thank her for the gift that she gave us kids, you know, way back when.
It's fantastic. So I think one thing that might surprise people about your novel is the road trip aspect and all of the other things that happen. I think it's easy to hear or to focus on. Okay, it's about nature, which it is. You get a sneak peek or a look behind from the view of what it's like to have autism. But then also there's this whole family dynamic and this road trip. And so what was that like for you coming up with all of those plot twists and the family dynamic? And
yeah, I guess I should step back and just say, yeah, for those of you that haven't read it, it's a story about an autistic 12-year-old boy that very reluctantly and against his will must make this just wild, crazy cross-country journey with his annoying twin younger brothers and his annoying older sister, teenage sister, and a very mysterious and suspicious babysitter that he just doesn't trust or doesn't know if he can trust because he doesn't know her story or why she's helping out the family at all. And his grandma is who helps to raise him, is with his dad, who's been injured, has had a brain injury in Afghanistan, is at a hospital across the country in Virginia, and he lives in San Diego. So it's that cross-country journey they have to take to get to dad. The cross-country journey part is based in part on the car trips that we used to take as a family with my 3 boys and my husband. You know, during the summers, we'd pile them into the car, the minivan, the old dented minivan, and take those trips. You know, and I think just about every kid or every family knows that feeling of the kids piled in the back seat, you know, squabbling with each other and the long car journey. So we did that, but you know, we thought it'd be fun to show the kids. We went east one year and we went to Colonial Williamsburg and we saw Washington, DC and such. And then we went west one year, we went to Yellowstone and a bunch of places in Montana and through North Dakota and South Dakota, excuse me. So yeah, basically all places that are in the Someday Birds are places that we visited. The only place that we have not visited or that I personally have not visited that is in the book is Las Vegas. I've never been to Las Vegas, but I had to do some research for that one. But otherwise the trip is places where things have happened, where our family has been. And these road trips, they were hard on my middle boy, Nate, especially because he likes things very much the same. He doesn't like change. He had sensory issues, so being in a different place every night to sleep was not fun. He has food issues, or especially back then, very big food issues, and the only thing he would eat was chicken nuggets, which is something shared by Charlie in the Someday Birds. And I remember one night we were at some restaurant after being on the road for like a week and a half, and Nate's brother said to him, because we were eating chicken nuggets, he was like, God, you know what? We should really just write a travel journal and we could call it Chicken Nuggets Across America, because that's basically all we've been eating this whole trip. And then Nate said something back to him that was really wise, I thought. He just said, well, I figure as long as if there's chicken nuggets, I can pretty much survive anything, you know? And it really just struck me about, well, what does it take for us to be able to survive? what does it take for us to be able to be resilient and get through what we have to get through in life? And isn't that okay? If it, so it was just sort of the start of the seed of the idea for the story. And I know some classrooms, when they read the book together in class, will put a big map of America up in the front, and they'll map out the journey and do a little bit of research about each location they stop along the way. And of course, all along the way, Charlie's looking for birds.
Do you have a favorite section of your book? Is that an impossible question to ask a writer?
Yeah, I don't know if I have a favorite section. I don't. I put a tab in a few. I don't know if you had wanted me to read a little bit, because you had mentioned that.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah, because I was looking through and thinking, what would be good? I think something about the beginning and something about the ending stays with me, or just the memory of having written those pages stays with me the most. Maybe because they're the ones that, you feel the biggest push to get right,
True.
So
yes, if you would share a passage with us, that would be great.
I think I could either, and you tell me, Susan, which one would be better. I could read just the very beginning a little bit, or I could read a little bit about when they get to an observatory in Wyoming.
Ooh, oh my goodness. I like both of those parts. Maybe the beginning. That might be a good start.
Absolutely. Okay, here we are. This is the Someday Birds, chapter 1, which is called Flockers and Loners. I'm gonna put my glasses on here. My hands aren't really clean unless I've washed them 12 times, one for each year of my life. I soap rinse 1, soap rinse 2, soap rinse 3, soap rinse 4, soap rinse 5, soap rinse 6, open my palms to scalding water and repeat. I do it quick so no one notices, and I'm usually done in about the same time it takes Joel and Jake to spray water at each other and throw towels on the floor, which is what they call washing up. This time I've got to go faster because Graham's already yelling from the driveway. Charlie, get your behind out here. Your father's waiting. But he's not really waiting. Dad never knows if we're in his hospital room or not. Graham does something my sister Davis called sideways swearing. Graham says words like behind, flippin', heck, and gosh dang. Davis, who's 15 and a half, says, Graham, just curse normally like the rest of the world. Then Graham says, Davis, I ever hear that kind of talk out of your sassy teenage mouth, I'll swat your dang behind so hard you'll think twice about talking in general. I used to be scared of Graham. Davis says, that's just Graham's way, tough love. But I don't get how tough equals love. Dad's love wasn't tough. He never lost his temper or freaked out with worrying or tried so hard to control everything we did or sideways swore. Still, I have to admit I'm no expert on love or hate or really anything that has to do with feelings. I rely on what Davis tells me. She's the expert on that kind of stuff. The doctors are supposed to have some news for us today about Dad's condition, so when Graham crams us all into her little car to go visit the hospital, the sideways swearing really cranks up. Finally, here's our Lysol Louie, says Graham when I open the back door and wait for Joel and Jake to scoot over. My name isn't Lysol Louie, it's Charlie, I say. Joel and Jake says, you think we don't know your name, droid? My name isn't droid, it's Charlie. I say it quiet and hope they'll drop it. My twin brothers are up to something. I'm not the best at reading people in general, but I know evil when I see it in those identical pairs of eyes. Get in, Charlie, Dad's waiting, yells Davis from the front passenger seat. Meanwhile, the twins snicker, waiting for me to sit down in my spot. Dad's not really waiting, I say, taking a Kleenex out of my trusty supply pack and brushing away the dead flies and dry lint my brothers have strewn on my seat. I used to get upset at their little booby traps of contamination, but Davis told me that's exactly what they want. She told me not to react, not to give them the satisfaction. So I just shoot the twins a dead fisheye look and sit down carefully, making sure no part of me touches any part of Joel. Dad's not really waiting because he doesn't know whether we're there or not, I explain. Davis and Graham don't like hearing this, but if something's a fact, it's a fact, and I don't think it's wrong to say it out loud. Dad's got a brain injury, and he stares straight ahead like he's looking at something really far away. He doesn't say much or seem to see us. Graham says that brain injuries like Dad's are unpredictable things, and we don't know anything for sure. She says we have to treat him normally, tell him about our day, even if he just sits there. She says, Charlie, that's how we got you to start talking when you were little. You were just like your dad, all sealed off in your own little world, but we broke through to you finally, didn't we? We talked your gosh dang ears off. We talked and talked. We made you do stuff, go to therapy. We wouldn't let you off the hook. So now we won't let your dad off the hook either. Off the hook is a weird expression. I imagine being a really little kid just wanting to be left alone, and there's a big fish hook holding me up by the back of my collar while I dangle, and a whole crowd of people, my family, therapists, doctors, watches me squirm. Is that how Dad feels in the hospital? Inside, where we can't tell what's going on, is he squirming too? Dad got hurt in Afghanistan. He's not in the military though. He's an English teacher and part-time journalist. He was over there to do a profile on some soldiers, to write about what their life was like, but a bomb went off while he was riding around in a Jeep. The doctor said Dad was really lucky because he got thrown into the air away from the explosion. Graham covered her eyes and said, Holy Jesus, when the doctors first told us that. But I asked them more questions. I needed to picture what that moment was like with my dad flying through the air like a bird. I tried to draw it once, how high the flames could have reached, which direction Dad flew. I drew him flying, and I wish I could have drawn a better place to land. Dad sustained a head injury. That's the word they used, sustained. It means you've had to withstand something, but it also means something is stretched out like a note of music, just played and held constant for a long period of time. That's what it's like now with Dad in the hospital. Like the strange, invisible hum is in the air around us. And Graham and the twins and Davis and I just have to keep listening to it, and none of us know how long it will go on. That's it.
Thank you. I remember clearly the first time I read that, and just I was hooked. I'll use the word hooked. I was hooked right away. I felt like I instantly got to know Charlie, and I wanted to know what happened next. I think that continued to be one of my favorite parts of the book was learning situations from Charlie's point of view, when it's typically, I feel like whenever characters are depicted in films or in books, the autistic character, the story is not told from their point of view. It is told from those around them. And just hearing all of his perfectly logical explanations was really eye-opening for me. And I found myself going around thinking of situations and imagining like, well, how would Charlie be feeling right now? Or how would this work for him? So I just thought that was wonderful that you were able to give that insight. And then I was curious, how did your children receive the book? You know, did your son see himself in the book, or how did that?
Yeah, I think now he's very much a fan of Charlie. It's not, of course, not 100% anyone. He's a fictional character, so he's really kind of a mix of everybody. And if anything, I think he's my childhood voice more than my own son's. It was funny, when I first finished the book, my son was young enough, my autistic son, that he wasn't comfortable with his own autism. He wasn't comfortable self-advocating at school for it. He didn't want anything to do with his IEPs or talking about it. He wanted to pretend he wasn't. So I finished the book at a writer's retreat, actually, and I called him up and I said, I just finished this book and it's my heart gift to you. It's a love gift to you. I can't wait for you to read it. I hope you can read it soon. And he just looked at me and said, I got homework. I've got better stuff to do. And it did take him a few years before he actually read the book. But now he's in his 20s and he's studying to be a special ed teacher. And he's come so far, so far. And it's just been such an amazing journey, you know, to see him too. He's just this brilliant, brilliant kid. And yeah, so, you know, it's nice to, in their own quiet way, you know, sons and mothers, they completely support me, but love to make fun of me, you know, terribly at the same time. So we
That is
laugh
the
together.
role of mothers. Mothers are in families to be made fun of by their children. I've come to realize. Yeah.
You're so
So
funny.
I have a million more questions for you, but I also want to make sure that our participants, even though we can't see them, I want them to know that that their questions or comments are welcome. So our audience members, feel free to type in any questions or comments you have for us. And I did see the results from the poll earlier that Megan put out. So it looks like we have a majority of adults with us today, and then a couple of teens and kids joining us. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much. On a Saturday afternoon, there are so many things you can do with your time, and that you're here with us is really special.
So while we're giving everybody a little more time to get their thoughts together, I do have a couple more questions for you that I was thinking of. Let's see. Did you have to do a lot of research about birds?
I did so much research about birds. I very much did. I even brought some books up here so that I can show you some of the books that I read.
Okay.
I read this one, The Thing with Feathers by Noah Stryker. It was fascinating. He just goes around the world learning about different birds. He's a, you know, an ornithologist. Learned so much. Of a Feather, A Brief History of American Birding by Scott Wiedensall. That was definitely an interesting one. This one was, I think, one of my favorites. What the Robin Knows by John Young. I just learned so much about bird behavior from it. And this was the book that gave me the idea about, you know, that what is Charlie seeking? Why does he love birds so much? How can I connect that into his autism a little bit? And I think always being sort of like a social scientist. Sometimes when I talk about myself when I was a kid, I felt like Margaret Mead, like I was a sociologist desperately seeking for all of the clues on how people, you know, just relate and talk to each other, and, you know, how the other girls talked and behaved. So it was a deliberate study, like I was a sociologist trying to figure it out. And thinking about birds, you know, this book is about how bird behavior is similar to human behavior sometimes. You know, he talks about all the different things that we think happen, and we just assume, oh, birds, you know, they call in the morning, they call in the evening. Why do birds sing? Nobody even asks the question, but he answers the question. They sing because they're trying to make contact with their mate at feeding time at dawn and dusk. That's why you hear them at dawn and dusk, and all the birds are saying, you know, the male bird is like, hey, I'm over here, I found a worm, where are you? And then the female bird is like, tweet, tweet, I'm over here, don't worry, I'm nearby, I'm safe. And that's why they call, and that's what you hear going on in the morning and the evening. And it sort of got me thinking too, in a bunch of different ways, like, well, Charlie should be, you know, so fascinated about maybe he can find ways to relate to other people by studying other birds. And you know, maybe that's a way in for him. And also, you know, that's, as you just mentioned, Susan, that's kind of Charlie's thing too, or, you know, his autism, just as we hear birds chirp and we don't realize that there's a vast, important meaning behind it. It's not just random. It's the same way with autistic kids. You may not know what's going in their mind and you just assume it's some random thing. It's not. There's definitely something going on there, something they're trying to communicate, but they're missing some essential ingredient maybe, or, you know, there's definitely some meaning there. we just can't pick up the clues because we're not listening carefully. We're not being observant enough. That's just was really important to me to kind of get across.
Were there any other particular bird facts that were really fascinating to you when you were doing your research?
I remember loving the bowerbird, who builds these elaborate, crazy nests. You know, they're just gorgeous architectural structures that are up to 4 feet high to attract their mates, and they'll fly for miles trying to find little shiny bits and make little pathways and things. That didn't make it in the book, but I found that amazingly fascinating. Yeah, there's just all kinds of really fascinating stuff. A couple of other books too, of course, and there's a lot of things on the Nature Channel on National Geographic lately from David Attenborough, but his classic Amazing the Life of Birds was another fantastic read. And another one I want to mention too is, and this was a classic, it's a little older now, but still so relevant, is The Last Child in the Woods by Richard Louv. And about how, you know, we all often think, you know, we're lacking vitamin D or we're lacking vitamin C, and he calls it vitamin N. We're human beings, we need nature. Nature is our vitamin N, and we just need to reestablish that connection to it so much. So
I have to say that is one book that I do have on my shelf at home as well. It's a great one. And of course, as soon as this video is over, I'm going to be going back through and writing down all of those books that you suggested or that you mentioned, and make sure that the library has them so that people that want to follow up.
Oh, that's great. That would be great. There's another one I can mention too. I just got it in the mail. I cannot wait to start reading it. It's by a 17-year-old autistic Irish kid named Dara McNulty, and it's called Diary of a Young Naturalist. And it's won all kinds of awards in the UK. It's supposed to be this tremendous book. I cannot wait to start reading it. So that's really exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, I have not heard of that one.
Yeah, you look him up. He's amazing. His writing is just absolutely gorgeous. You're just blown away that it's a 17-year-old kid, and the connection to nature, and it just, oh yeah, it's an amazing book.
Well, while we're talking about books, one question that came in from our audience is, have you written any other books, or do you have any other reading recommendations that children with autism can relate to?
Yes, absolutely. And I have written other books. I have another novel also for middle graders called Stanley Will Probably Be Fine. And this is a book about, there's Stanley, there's his friend Liberty Silverberg. It's about anxiety, and it's about overcoming your fears, which is kind of what I guess everything I write is sort of about. And this one, in this book, Stanley, 12-year-old Stanley, is, he's just started in a big new middle school that's terrifying to him. His best friend is just ditching him for cooler kids in this big new middle school. The school is having all of these scary drills that, you know, that is kind of freaking him out because he's got such anxiety and sensory issues. And his big thing is he just absolutely loves comics, and he's a comics trivia like master. He just knows all comics trivia so well because it's his thing. He just loves it. And he also draws his own. He starts to, he freaks out during a scary drill, and the school counselor brings him into a quiet space, a little unused office next to hers in the front offices, and says, here, you can calm down here. And there's an easel there, and he starts drawing sort of a wishful character. He starts drawing his own imaginary school safety superhero named John Lockdown, this character that's going to help him, like, you know, get through it. And the next time he's in that room for a calm down time, he sees that somebody has mysteriously continued his comic. So he keeps having this mysterious conversation with, where John Lockdown seems to be answering him in his own comic. And what else happens in this book is he decides to prove himself by entering the Comic Fest, which is a big comics convention treasure hunt all downtown San Diego. It's like a treasure hunt through all of the landmarks in this town to try to win tickets to Comic-Con, basically, the big comics festival that we have here in downtown San Diego. But in the book, it's called Comics Fest. So he figures, oh, my best friend is not going to ditch me anymore. He's going to think I'm cool again. If I can win these tickets, I'm going to try to do it. That's his big quest. And most of the book is a treasure hunt, a puzzle kind of book, where he's trying to solve these clues that all are about comics trivia and going all around downtown. So it's like a funnier book. It's more lighthearted, but it's definitely about a neurodivergent boy grappling with his anxiety and his sensory issues. He is a kid on the spectrum as well, because I don't think I can not write about that. I also have a picture book called Benji, the Bad Day, and Me, which is about two brothers. And it was very much inspired by these two brothers. And Benji and Sammy gets home from school and he's just had a horrible day. And his autistic little brother just kind of saves it for him in a way that is very heartfelt and true. So that's my picture book. And yeah, and then there are some other really wonderful books. I'm looking over at my shelf right now. There are a lot of new ones that are kind of fun. I should say that I'm also the editor and co-founder of a website called anovelmind.com. It's just anovelmind.com. And it's about children's fiction, children's literature, mental health, and neurodiversity representation. So we have weekly guest blogs, guest writers that are writing about neurodivergence, about books where the main characters may have ADHD or autism or Tourette's or some other neurological issue, or it's a mental health issue with anxiety, grappling with anxiety or social phobia, or it's just about all these, this big, spread of issues that are affecting our kids more than ever these days. I mean, the latest statistics are something like 1 out of 6 school children now struggles with anxiety. The rates are going up all the time. I think the autism rate is 1 in 52 right now. And in some states like New Jersey, it's much higher. So I think that means that in every single classroom, just statistically, there's going to be at least one child that's dealing with these issues. And kids learn best through stories. Stories really help us to grapple with these things and also to feel seen. If we see ourselves in a story, we realize we're not alone. Stanley has anxiety just like I do. Stanley has problems making friends just like I do. Let's look and see how he faces all of that and gets through it. It's really helpful for kids. And I think it's really helpful to talk together with in classes, as group reads. It's such an important thing because it gives you a way in that's safe to talk about, certain mental health issues that may be challenging the class. If a lot of kids seem to be experiencing anxiety, you can read as a class a book about anxiety or a character that's dealing with it. And it gives you a way to talk about it without personalizing it for an individual kid while keeping it kind of safe. So these stories are so important, mental health stories are. And in that website, anovelmind.com, we have a database of over 1,000 books where you can search it by issue. Like if you're interested in trying to find a book for a high school student about an eating disorder, you can enter those terms and find the list of books. Or if you're interested in autism and preschoolers, you can find a list of books.
Well, that sounds like a great resource for us librarians, definitely to know about. So thank you.
For sure. Yeah, and the weekly blogs are helpful. In terms of other books, excuse me, I'm going to just go grab a couple on my shelf. In terms of picture books, there are a few that I absolutely love. This one is about a very shy social anxiety girl. It's called Truman. Maybe you guys know it. And she goes away for her first day of school, and the little turtle has to deal with not having his girl with him. And it's just such a sweet book, and it just gets at so many of those feelings that preschoolers have. There's a series of books by Samantha Cotterill, who is also autistic and is a really good friend of mine now. We just bonded because we found each other through writing circles, and we have so much in common. We were just amazed. And yeah, she's a beautiful artist and writer, and she has a series called the Little Senses series, and they're all about issues that affect kids that are neurodivergent. Like when your plans change, you like things to be the same, but sometimes plans change. So it's a little girl who planned a sunny birthday party, but it rained. And how did she handle that? And there are others about, here's I think another one I have here. Yeah, about eating. Nope, never, not for me. I don't want to eat that broccoli. So Sam Cotterill's books are great for that. There's another
so
book.
often I find that all of these issues that are addressed apply so well to all children. Obviously the responses are going to be on a different scale, but every parent has experienced a child upset because plans changed, or not liking to eat a certain food. So it's helpful for all families to take a look and see.
That's such a good point, and it's so true. It's like autistic issues are human issues. All these issues are human issues. We all feel all these things. What makes it only, what puts it into a category with a label is only the degree to which it affects your life. If it really affects your life to the point where it affects you being able to be happy or functioning, you get a label on it, but basically it's the same behavior and the same feelings we all have. So yeah, totally.
Can you talk a little bit about the differences between boys and girls with autism and being diagnosed?
Yes, absolutely. I think we've come so far from thinking, hopefully we've come far. It used to be that when you think of autism, you would think of Rain Man, or you would think of just that stereotypical male or teenage boy that just plays violent video games all day, or plays video games all day and just blocks everything out and has really bad social cues. Or you think of like the character of Abed on Community or something, just somebody that was really nerdy and maybe funny, the butt of jokes. And girls weren't even on the radar as a stereotype, because they weren't even on the radar as having autism, which most researchers now suspect they do at the same rates as boys, but they're just not picked up. They fly under the radar. Functional MRI has shown that girls with autism have much greater social awareness. They may not have the social skills, but they have the social awareness that there's a lack there, or that there's something that they need to do. They're aware of what's going on. They just may not know how to join in with the other girls, or handle the dynamics, or, pick up the subtle cues that are being given. But they're aware. And it's that awareness that causes extra anxiety in girls.
I was going to say that almost makes it sound harder to cope with.
Yeah, because there's a lot of sensitivity there. It can be really hard. I found that was one of my biggest issues growing up as well. There's bullying. Girls also tend to not get diagnosed because they're quieter. They just stay quiet, or they choose special interests that are within the realm of the normal. Like they get super interested in clothes or fashion or drawing certain things or whatever. And nobody really picks up that that's autistic, because most girls do that. If they do it to an excessive degree, it's not really even picked up. As opposed to if they were into train tables or, whatever, people would seem to think, maybe something's going on. Although when I was 10 years old, I was totally into NHL hockey. If you asked me any statistic, I collected hockey cards. I knew everything about every player. I would tell you, and everybody just thought it was like a fun party trick to ask me to do that stuff. I was really into it for some years. Of course, nobody in a million years thought there was something weird about me, for better or for worse. I don't know. But anyway, yeah. Anyway.
So, did anything change for you once you received an official diagnosis?
It was a really hard time, and I actually went into therapy for a little while to try to figure out what to do with that diagnosis. And it's been a really slow process of looking back with a new lens on a lot of the struggles I had as a kid. I think it's been really helpful because I feel like it's integrating selves for me. Instead of feeling shame for certain things I never got right, I see why I didn't get them right, and I can forgive myself for that better. So overall, it's been really a wonderful thing for me to get that diagnosis, but it's taken me a while to get to the place where I'm comfortable talking about it. So yeah, but it's good. It's definitely good. But not everybody, it's expensive to get a diagnosis, and as an adult, it's hard. So not everybody does go through that process, and that's fine. We all are where we are.
What would you say is the best, how do I phrase this? Maybe the thing that you think is, what are you the happiest about for being autistic? Like, I feel like this is not to focus on all the struggles that can come along with it, but there have to be some advantages, some things that you have to offer that others don't.
I think it might be it's a two-sided thing, but just such a deep sensitivity to the world, kind of. Yeah, because I think it enables me to be more observant, and I feel like writing is really my refuge and my joy. It's really where I try to make sense of the world. It's where I can, where things are peaceful and calm, and I can concentrate. So I think the gift of being able to write, or knowing that it's validating that my writing is reaching readers, that I'm able to communicate with others that way successfully, is huge for me, really huge. Because usually in person, it's a little harder. Like even now we're talking, I'm trying really hard to keep my eyes open and keep staring at the screen. And I'm madly swirling my little thing that I have to sort of, detox the extra energy a little bit. So yeah, it's tricky. And I think that's another reason why I don't do like day-long conferences or anything like that. It's a bit too much for me. But things like this are such a joy to do and so perfect. So thank you for this opportunity.
Absolutely. And I also want to mention to any teachers that may have joined us today, the fantastic offer that you've made, and it's on your website, that you enjoy popping in virtually for a few minutes to answer students' questions. So teachers know that that's out there.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, anytime. That's the biggest joy, is connecting. And especially with kids that recognize themselves in my characters, like Stanley and Charlie, and just being able to reach them and seeing that point of connection, and that they've found something there that's helped them, is just the most wonderful feeling.
So I do have one or two more questions, but I want to double check and see, does anyone else out there have any questions for us or comments? Not seeing anything yet. I just wanted to ask you a little bit about just the writing process in general. Do you have any tips for other writers out there, adults or kids that want to pursue writing?
Yeah, for kids, just absolutely go for it. Just write. Don't be afraid. Just let it all out in whatever form you want, online, or if you keep a paper journal, or if you draw comics, or it doesn't even matter how. It's just so fantastic to give yourself the gift of self-expression. Just go for it. It doesn't even matter what the final product is. It's a process. Just go for it. And I guess that kind of holds for adults as well, you know. Use it for self-reflection and self-expression and see what comes of it. And don't expect that the first words you put down on a paper or the first words you type into that document are going to be, you know, perfect or have to be perfect. They're going to change so much. And I guess when I was first starting, I used to think that editing meant, you know, just tweaking your words here and there and going through and cleaning up. But if you really are serious about writing, you're going to have to, as they say, you know, kill your darlings. You're going to have to go through and really say, okay, you know, this big chunk of pages 1 through 22, you know, it's got to go. I've got to rewrite that in a different way, you know, or you know, chapters 7 through 9 are out of there and I've got to rejigger this. So you have to be able to think big and know that if you've written it once, you can rewrite something again. If you get, you know, you don't get too attached. And just keep reading the kinds of things that you like. If you're interested in writing for children, go to the bookstore, go to the library and sit down and spend the afternoon there and just pour through the stacks and find all the wonderful stories that are similar to what you might be trying to do. And look at them analytically. Try to analyze how chapters are divided and how pages are divided and, you know, how the writers have done what they've done. You can learn so much.
Thank you. That is such great advice. And I just want to thank you too for all of your time today and for first of all, for writing such a fantastic novel that I thoroughly enjoyed. And then for taking the time to answer so many questions and to talk about something that is so personal that you've been through, but knowing that hopefully it is going to benefit others. Just the more we talk about problems that we have, the more they're shared and the more others are comfortable. So I really appreciate you doing that for our community today.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much.
And so I will ask Megan to send out the survey while we're doing our closing remarks here so that we can get some feedback from our participants. But is there anything else that you wanted to share with us today?
I don't know. I just wish everybody the best and stay safe and stay healthy and enjoy reading and enjoy your peaceful, quiet times too. Get out in nature. A little good. Enjoy.
Well, thank you so much. It was my pleasure to get to speak with you today. And thank you all participants for tuning in to hear from Sally J. Pla, author of The Someday Birds, as well as some other novels that she talked about today and picture books. And we have more events coming up with our Read Across the County program. This was our final author visit, but we do have some other programs going on. So you can check the library's calendar and check the Read Across the County website on the library page for more details about that. And we will leave the survey up just a little bit longer for anyone that wants to fill that out. But I'm going to say thank you so much.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you so much.